welcome to another edition of Bleeding Cool Chatter. My name is Kaitlyn Booth, and I am the head film writer here at Bleeding Cool. And I have snagged three of my writers today to talk about Star Wars. And they are...
I'm Jeremy Conrad. I write about toys and collectibles and film and whatever else I can get my hands on for Bleeding Cool.
I'm Addy Tantamid. I write mostly about movies and very occasionally about comics.
Alright, so there's really only one piece of news that is happening this week, and that is Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now, Bill, Jeremy, and I, we all had our press screenings yesterday in the middle of the afternoon at a really inconvenient time for anybody this isn't their full-time job. And Addy's just kind of jumping in because he's like, I don't give a shit about spoilers. We're going to go spoiler-free first of all, and then we're going to kind of see how it goes. And if we want to do spoilers, we'll probably do that either as the latter half of the episode, for which we will make like a timestamp, or it'll be clearly labeled for when the spoilers will start, or we're going to make it a second episode. We haven't quite decided how we're going to spin this yet. But I wanted to get some feedback from Bill, and I wanted to get some feedback from Jeremy about what they thought about the movie, and then I want to hear Addy's reactions to our reactions as to whether or not they have made him more excited or less excited, or if they haven't affected his opinion at all. Sound good?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Right, Bill? Shut up, Jeremy. Bill, you start.
I really enjoyed it. I've been going into this I was not a big fan of 7. It was just completely a rehash of A New Hope. It was tedious. Granted, it was better than the prequels, but that's not a huge bar. Then we had Rogue One, which I still find is an amazing, amazing, great film. But now we've got something back to the canon, and where after I saw Episode 7, I left the theater thinking, okay, this was great, and I thought about it more and more. I'm like, no, it's not. The more I think about Jedi, I left liking it, but the more I think about it, the more I think I like it more. And it just keeps growing on me, and it's really exciting. And there was, the whole movie. Plus, I think it's going to take time for there to be enough distance between Carrie Fisher's passing and seeing this movie, because my reaction as a fan, as a moviegoer, and as a critic is so tightly wound with the emotional reaction to Carrie that it's hard to separate it and what this film really is.
Jeremy, you want to do some vague thoughts first of all, since we're trying to be as spoiler-free as possible. For the record, as of recording, my spoiler-free review is up. Bill's will be going up tomorrow, and Jeremy's will be going up the day after that. But go ahead, as much as you feel like you can say without being without going into too many spoilers.
I thought it was awesome. I have loved Star Wars my entire life, and I can honestly say that this was the first time that I sat in a theater and felt like this was made for me. Luke Skywalker taught me how to be a good person, and to see him, because I was born in '84, so I missed the original trilogy in the theater when it was first released. I'd only ever seen the special editions in the theater, and it's just not the same. This was the first movie I got to experience brand new with Luke Skywalker on the screen, talking to me about what it means to be a Jedi, and it filled me with all kinds of emotions that I wasn't expecting whatsoever. And it took a lot of risks, and I felt like a good vast majority of them really worked and paid off really well. And I think it's a movie that requires a second viewing to truly appreciate it, because when you go into a movie like this, you're nervously excited for like the first half, and then once you see it the second time, you can just relax in the seat and let it envelop you, and you can just enjoy it. So I loved it.
I actually have tickets for an 11:45 showing on Thursday night with one of my really good friends. So I am looking forward to seeing it a second time, because I felt like it's very almost overwhelming. And I just remember I messaged you right after I got out of it, and I think my response was just, well, that happened.
Yep.
Like, I'm so glad my Disney rep, God bless him, he doesn't ask us for comments. And I don't know why, but he doesn't.
You're lucky. We had to fill out the forms.
Yeah, I didn't have to fill out any forms, and I didn't have to give an official comment. And I'm so glad he didn't ask me to do that, because I don't know what I would have said, especially right afterwards. I didn't know how to react. There's been this worry among Star Wars fans, and I feel like rightfully so, that Lucasfilm isn't letting directors make their own movies. That they're hanging over their shoulders. They're saying, you're not in line, so you have to do this, and this. They're telling these directors what kind of movies they have to make. And while I'm sure it is much like Marvel, a very producer driven company, this did very much feel like a Rian Johnson movie. It felt like something that came from a place of genuine heart and passion, and somebody who just loves this series so much, but not so much that he's irreverent toward it. Sometimes when fans make things, they tend to have almost too much love for the source material. The best example for that I can come up with would be the Warcraft movie that Duncan Jones did. That movie was so in love with the source material, it forgot to be a movie. So Johnson he loves it very clearly, but he's also willing to look at established things and go, we're not doing that anymore. I'm changing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I mean, in the trailers, Luke Skywalker says, this is not going to end the way you think. And that's what I've been telling everyone about this movie. I'm like, whatever you think is going to happen in this movie, you're probably wrong. And whatever expectations you have, you should probably just disregard them and just go in with a clean slate, because there are so many things here that I wasn't expecting that I just really, really enjoyed. At the end of the day, it felt very much like a character piece in a way that you don't get to see in blockbuster filmmaking a lot, that I really appreciated from a person who appreciates storytelling on multiple levels. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree?
I think that's what I kind of expect from Rian Johnson, because of his work as a director. With ever since he did Brick, which is probably my favorite of his movies, which was this kind of total deconstruction and subversion of Dashiell Hammett detective stories by locating it in high school, and then dealing with high school politics. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, this guy has an interesting point of view. And, to some extent, he also did it with the Brothers Bloom, which I thought was slightly less successful, but I could see what he was trying to do, which was incredibly precocious and meta, the way that it kind of talks about, it goes into literary conventions, which and so between Brick and that, you sort of think, this guy's really smart. He's also very well read. He knows books, and he knows structure, and he understands theme. And, Looper is his version of time travel. And then if you look at the episodes of Breaking Bad that he directed, which were actually probably the most sophisticated and multi-layered as well as visually interesting episodes of Breaking Bad. So I kind of have high hopes that he might actually do something interesting with Star Wars if they let him. And so the impression they totally let him, which is that he seems to be totally aware that everyone's going to go, if they totally rip off Empire Strikes Back and just do the same beats, I'm going to be really pissed. Just like a lot of people are really pissed that Force Awakens is just a beat for beat rejig of A New Hope, essentially. So the fact that everyone's kind of excited that he knows what you're expecting, and he just turns and reverses and subverts all your expectations. That's something that's incredibly clever, and that's something that only a very, very confident storyteller could do. Not to mention that from the clips I've seen, he's also an incredibly stylish storyteller. Ooh.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Marianne.
I love that picture.
There you go.
I can't hear anything. Ah! This is really tight on my head. Hi, guys.
Hello.
So, what are we talking about?
Star Trek.
Things, movies.
Oh, Star Trek. So I should go back
I
upstairs.
legitimately almost put on a Star Trek shirt when I was getting dressed to do this. So I was like, how much?
You brought out all your toys. Did Bill show you guys his toys?
Yes, mostly because I pulled out my Luke Skywalker and then he was inspired.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. All right. What was said? What did I miss?
What's your opinion?
What's my opinion?
Yeah, we're doing spoiler free for this part right now.
Bring Kleenex.
Yes.
No, really. Bring Kleenex. I should have. I should have, and even then it wouldn't have been enough. That's not giving anything away at all. People who are emotionally invested in the franchise for a myriad of reasons will have reactions to this film. Just no matter good, bad, whatever, you will feel things. You will feel things.
Are you still processing? Are you still having trouble?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My entire household is mocking me mercilessly for how much I did cry during the film. So it's going to be a while before I get over that, I think.
I cried a bunch too. I told Kaitlyn I got misty cried 3 times, and then there's a point towards the end where I just had streams of tears going down my cheeks.
And I was okay until the credits. And then I lost it
Yeah.
again. And I was just like, oh! It was a problem.
I don't consider that to be a spoiler because it's already been said on a bunch of different websites, but at the end of the original run of the credits, they say dedicated to our Princess Carrie Fisher or something along that lines, and I was like, shit.
Yep. Same.
Every time she's already a magnetic presence on screen. Every time she is present during this movie is just, it's already emotional, and then it's just like, this is just really kind of hard to watch.
Yeah.
But don't listen to the Variety reviewer who said that the entire if you haven't read it.
Oh god, I could do a half hour just yelling about that review, but I won't.
I haven't read it.
We should do that. I
haven't read it.
It is terribly insulting. Terribly
Really?
insulting. He says that she becomes a tragic figure in this film rather than being an empowering figure. Kid you not, that's what he said.
Wow.
Yep.
Somebody needs to tell him what tragedy is.
In his face with both fists. I mean, what? No, I'm not condoning violence. Bleeding Cool does not condone violence of any type.
Despite that fact that there are comic creators who have threatened to punch some of our writers in the face.
But that's not us
No.
doing it. Yes, I liked it. It was good. It was emotional. I don't think I'm ready to see it again yet, but I probably will.
You guys might like the Guardian review. It's probably the most eloquent while being spoiler-free at the same time.
I've been reading a couple of reviews. I read, let's see, who did I read? I read Fangirl Nation because I was curious what they thought, and they actually really didn't like it. I have a couple of friends in Salt Lake. I know one of whom also didn't really like it. Said it was just a bunch of well-shot pieces that don't form a coherent whole, which I didn't quite.
That's how I thought of Thor.
I also didn't really like Thor, and then I got an angry phone call from my parents berating me for not really liking Thor. So this is what happens when you convert your parents late in life to being a nerd. You get angry phone calls when you don't like comic book movies as much as they did. Let's see, I read Jason Ward's because Jason is a friend of mine on Making Star Wars, and I wanted to see his reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to listen to Steele Saunders' podcast that he's probably recording tonight or tomorrow, I think, out in Australia. Huh?
He said he has 2 done already.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Wow. I have a friend who just published her spoiler-free review. She is an Asian woman, and seeing her reaction of Rose Tico was really amazing, and I'm going to try to link to her stuff when I do mine on Friday, because it's special.
Yeah.
It's very special.
Yeah, it reminds me, there's a couple of moments in this movie where Finn does a lot of really cool stuff. And I'm very sad to say that we're not very culturally diverse out here in Utah. We're very white. And we really only have one prominent African-American nerd who tends to come to screenings, and even then he's a podcaster and not a full critic, so he doesn't always come, but he was at the Last Jedi screening, and every now and then I would just kind of go like this and just be like, oh, I'm watching Jay's reactions to things, and I'm like, I feel kind of like this is a bad thing for me to be doing, but at the same time, just like watching some of his reactions are just, it makes me excited to like Black Panther, because I remember how I felt when I watched Wonder Woman step up onto No Man's Land and how special that was for me. I'm excited for other people to experience that, and I'm so excited that Asian women got to feel that for Rose, because she is such a dynamic character. She's funny, she's heartfelt, she's a badass, she doesn't flinch, but she does, and it's just like, there are these, I've already seen some angry messages from people who haven't seen the movie, who have just read the spoilers, who haven't actually, seen the movie. See, here's the thing, people, that I'm going to tell people. Don't read the spoilers for this, because on paper, I would actually kind of say that this movie sounds like it wouldn't work, and there are just sometimes that's just the way it is sometimes. Sometimes things on paper sound like they shouldn't work, but it's all about execution. In this case, it's 100% about the execution. And they're like, oh, well, they're writing her as a cliche, or they're writing her as this. It's like, Rose has this amazingly badass moment where she saves somebody in such an awesome way. And I wanted to pump my fist in the theater when it happened. I was so excited to see someone like that, to see a woman like that and a woman of color have that moment in a Star Wars film, when women of color are very, very unrepresented in Star Wars right now.
Yep.
I mean, we're getting right now, if you're not a white man, you're either a male of color or you're a woman. They're not quite good at crossing those streams quite yet.
That's what was good about this film, is that it's got way more representation than we've ever had in a sci-fi film up to this point, of an American sci-fi film up to this point. And it was a really nice change and something really cool to see, and hopefully the trend will continue, because it totally worked. It totally worked.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people in the background. Like, I was like counting, I was like, there's a woman of color X-Wing pilot. I'm liking all of this diversity among the pilots, not just a bunch of weird aliens, but like heroes. Like, I believe there's a woman who looked like she was Indian, possibly, who was a pilot, and I was like, cool, badass. I want to see more of this, because it's not just main character diversity, it's also making the rest of your world feel populated in a way that isn't just a bunch of white guys. If you go back and watch the original trilogy, it's Leia standing in a room surrounded by nothing but white men, and it's just really kind of awkward to watch. Or it's Billy D. Williams standing in the middle of a room with all white men, and it's really kind of disheartening to watch, because it's not a reflection of reality at all. And I know, yada yada, it's a space opera, man, whatever. I don't want to hear that bullshit. There should be some reflection of reality in how you present humanoid characters. And I mean, this is sci-fi. Why can't we have that? Why can't we have more of that?
Yep. Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yes. I'm getting Marianne fired up. I'm excited about this.
I had a good day.
I had an interesting one.
I had to come down with her, because she's, the best and always with me.
That is a fantastic print.
I linked to it in an article where I wrote on Bleeding Cool about a bunch of Carrie Fisher appearances on Craig Ferguson, and I have a link to that art piece in that article. So everyone should go purchase it. It's a great piece.
It is.
I'm going to hand you guys back to Bill, because I've got to take a friend back to their domicile. So I will catch you all later.
It's lovely to see you.
Bye.
Thanks for jumping in.
Guys. Here you go.
Oh, here, you can, here you go. Do that one. Howdy, guys.
Hi.
I have returned.
We talked about you behind your back.
Oh no, it's kind of in front of me off to the side.
You just couldn't hear us.
Yeah, that's true. So I just had to fill in the blanks. Yeah. So where are we at now? Because as much as I love it, I has reservations.
Okay.
Should we jump to? Is this spoiler?
No, this isn't really spoilery. It's more. It's my thing was going to be because Addie was talking about how taking everything and turning it on its head. No, that's not quite true. That's giving it a little bit too much credit because there are major. So instead of doing exactly what A New Hope was, he takes Empire Jedi, throws it into a blender, kind of resequences stuff a bit, and throws in some dash of modern script writing. Yes. And that's kind of a bit more, but you can't really say it turns everything. No, you've still got a planet, so fine. It's not snow. It just looks like snow, and they're in trenches, and so it's kind of Hoth, but it's at the end of the movie, not the beginning of the movie. Original is a bit of a stretch. However, there's a lot of original stuff in there, but a lot of the set pieces are not entirely new. And I will totally give Rian Johnson that. Lots of people that are fans of science fiction as a genre will tend to steal liberally from those other shows.
Yep.
Here, I don't think he stole from those other shows, but I think he has the spirit of a lot of those other sorts of shows, like some of the confrontations between the ships. Very much hearken to things that have happened from other series, but it's not in a rip-off sort of fashion. You can't go, oh, that was from such and such. It's like, no, they're thinking about kind of tactics and how ships can be used in novel and creative ways when you're up against a wall. So that's mostly mine, though. And there are certain elements of the movie that are very much, I cannot help but look at it and go, this was designed expressly so that I can see it at Disneyland in a couple of years. There's a scene in a casino, which that casino we're going to see. Whether it be on the Disney Cruise Line or whether it be a Disney World, that thing's going to exist. Just going to happen. And it feels a little bit too much like, yeah, I'll see this again. However, there are some children in the movie that first I kind of reacted negatively towards because it feels too much like kind of like the Little Rascals Disney style. Thrown in here very much just only to play to the kids and kind of so they can visualize themselves within this setting. And it kind of, because like you had the Padawans from the prequel movies, but those didn't really connect to the viewers as being, this is me. These kids are very much phrased as this is me as a reflection of the audience. But when I say that as I've left the movie, I'm getting more fond of it. The final scene has a moment that the more I think about it, the more I can make myself start to tear up just thinking about how perfect that scene is.
The final shot in this movie is pretty much as close to cinematic perfection as we've seen in a Star Wars movie, and I can't even remember the last time.
It's E.T. flying against the moon.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, for me, it's even more than that because every person that's going to be there opening night is in that picture.
Yep.
You know, every single, and the more I think about it, it's like, yep, stepping very much out of being a fan of the genre and the series itself, maybe it is a little bit, contrived, but you know what? Hats off. It works. It works well. It played me hard, and I'm still kind of going, yeah, that's cool. And I want one of those damned rings, and it's cool.
There are going to be so many of those things on Etsy by the end of the weekend. So many. Okay, so
those rings, yeah. Go ahead.
So
that's me. Those are my reservations.
I have a few on myself as well. Well, I do think that Star Wars dialogue is kind of its own thing because it's Star Wars dialogue. There are a couple of moments that felt a little weird to me. And it's a long movie. It is. But that also might have something to do with the way that it's structured. It's very much not a 3-act structure at all. And there is a scene that takes place in the middle that would be a grand finale of a trilogy in any other movie. And it's just kind of there in the middle of the movie. And I'm sitting there and I realize I'm thinking about all the stuff I've seen so far. And I'm like, I haven't seen that scene yet, there's a whole other thing that's going to happen, and this movie feels like it should be ending, but it reminded me a little bit of the way that the Avengers kind of comes to a satisfying ending and then just kind of keeps going for another 30 minutes because it's like, I want to set off a bunch of fireworks. It's not quite setting off its own fireworks, but it does deliver something that I believe fans really, really will like and will really enjoy. One thing I do want to ask you guys about, and this is going to be a kind of a tough thing to get into without spoiling anything, but I am predicting that there are going to be some negative reactions to this. And Marianne said that it's going to be a movie that's going to leave you emotional one way or another. But one of the first things I said to another critic after the movie ended was, I was like, oh, this is going to be a bad weekend. Oh, there's going to be some really angry people. And do you guys think that's the case? Do you think there are going to be some people who are not going to be able to handle this?
Yes.
You mean about the character arcs where they go?
Some of them, yeah, I'm with Jeremy. Everything.
I know. I am in a Star Wars group with a bunch of people, and a lot of them, were 10, 11 years old when the original trilogy came out, and they're those fans, as I like to call them. I'm not trying to degrade anybody, but they're like, oh, we can't have women in Star Wars and blah blah blah, or women in Star Wars are fine, but we have Leia, so we don't need any more. They are going to hate so much of this, and without getting into spoilers, I can think, right off the bat, I can think of at least 5 plot points that they're going to have huge problems with.
Yeah,
huge.
Me too.
Right.
Yeah.
So the girls are icky crowd.
It's not just the girls are icky crowd.
Yeah,
it's the comic book fans are afraid of change crowd.
Yeah.
Because that's what the first movie was very much. The Force Awakens was very much about bringing everything back and reminding everybody that Star Wars is back. This one is very much saying Star Wars is back, but Star Wars is not the same. Star Wars is changing. Star Wars is evolving. And that means significant changes in ways that you might not be happy with. And, I could very easily see, let's face it, it's a Star Wars movie. They could have made money doing just about anything. And the fact that they were willing to lay down the gauntlet and make these changes and to say that things are not the same and to say that this universe is changing, that's in the ages of franchise management and trying to keep your fans happy all the time. That's kind of ballsy, for lack of a better way of putting it.
I actually think they're trying to grow their fan base with their changes.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Rather than staying with their original set. I was not 10. I was 7. Sorry. Yeah, I was 7. When I watch it, though I will admit I was not. It's kind of like so many people claim to have been on the last helicopter during the fall of Vietnam. I was not at the Chinese theater in May of '77. God damn, porg.
Oh, where mine is. Oh, I see where it is.
Chewie ate it. But coming from then to now, I have no problem with women characters. Women characters, men characters, if they're a cool character coming in to add something to the mix, more power to them. Personally, if I was going to think anything's going to make for some interesting ranting online this weekend, one of the characters does something to save themselves that, for me, stretches credibility a little bit.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like a lot bit, like to the point to me of being kind of stupid. But it's a reach, man. It's a reach. But there will be interesting analysis, and the midichlorians can do all things. I don't know. But that of all things, that was the only scene that really bugged me. They could have crafted that differently. And the other one was Captain Phasma. Once again,
she is the Boba Fett of these movies.
She shows up for 5 minutes flat.
Such a waste of
like,
Gwendolyn Christie. Such a waste.
Is that all the time they could get her from the Game of Thrones set, and that was it?
I don't know why anybody expected anything differently, though. I didn't.
I wanted a little more.
Right from the get-go, from the very first time I saw her walking down that hallway in the Force Awakens trailer, I'm like, that's Boba Fett. That's Boba Fett.
But then again, there is an entire subset of fans that think Boba Fett is the coolest shit to ever shit, so, you know.
I understand why.
Boba Fett is barely as cool enough to be a stormtrooper.
Bosk is better.
My favorite description of Boba Fett comes from the Weekly Planet that says he is the Abbott and Costello of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, like he shows up and then he falls into a pit.
Yep.
There's a huge fan base around him.
Yep.
Probably because they think it's...
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think fans are quite doing the same thing with Phasma, unfortunately, which is, you know, she could have been really, really awesome, and they don't really do anything with her, unfortunately. Which I don't really...
Yeah, and it's surprising because it feels like they just can't write for that character, don't really know how to fit it in to the normal narrative. And, you know, well, at least there's no trash compactors this time, but it was more just
But there's an entire, like, important group of people that don't even show up or barely get mentioned in this movie. She didn't have to be in it. They could have just not had her there, and then, you know, maybe Abrams could have sat down and went, oh, so this is what I want to do for this character in the next month.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's something I am disappointed about. But I think we might be veering very close into spoilers now. So, Addie, have any of our comments made you more excited, less excited? What do you think? What are your expectations going in, seeing it? Probably, are you gonna see it this weekend? Probably.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna see it Thursday or Friday, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna be fun. It's Rian Johnson, so he's a good filmmaker. I'm hoping, and you know, I like him more than J.J. Abrams because I know he's gonna try something interesting. And based on what Bill said, it also feels like the most consciously Disney-controlled Star Wars, which is trying to appeal to as many kids as possible. Not that it wasn't before, when they had Ewoks, and now they have the Porgs, and then they have the little kids as well. Which feels like Rian Johnson was kind of having to strike a balance between stuff he wants to do as a Star Wars fan and a storyteller, while also making Disney and the executives happy, which is that, okay, we appeal to kids, we appeal to certain demographics, we appeal to as wide an audience as possible, and not just the fans. And that's not to say that George Lucas probably thought about that in his own way when he was making the other trilogy as well. I mean, otherwise, how do you explain Jar Jar Binks, for example? Because little kids did like Jar Jar Binks. So for me, it's like, I don't know if I'll get emotional. That remains to be seen. It would be nice if it evokes emotion in me. And you know, I like Star Wars, but I've never been totally in love with it because I grew up with a whole bunch of other things as well. Like I grew up with a lot of Chinese martial arts and wuxia stuff and Japanese stuff. So if anything, throughout my entire childhood and life, when I watch Western stuff, I'm like, why aren't there more women in these? It's like, you know, one of the first shows that I fell in love with was Tezuka's Princess Knight, which I don't know if you guys have seen it or heard, but it was set in a kind of Disney version of Fairy Tale Land, except that it was oddly subversive. It was about a swashbuckling prince who was really a girl, and she had to pretend to be a boy, a swashbuckling boy, in order to help her parents keep the kingdom from their enemies. Because if their enemies discover that there's no male heir, they'll topple the kingdom. And this is an entire cartoon series based on a manga that pretty much single-handedly launched the girls' manga market in Japan in the 60s. And I watched that in syndication, and you know, in wuxia movies from Hong Kong, they almost always had female warriors and female swordswomen. And so for me, for my entire life, I always thought, why is it that they keep having women be just the girlfriends in Western movies when the women in my family they didn't need men to rescue them. If anything, the women in my family were quite often getting men out of trouble. So this is my own feeling. So if anything, Star Wars has at least finally caught up with stuff that I feel should be portrayed. So I'll be happy with this at least when I see this.
Absolutely. Have Jeremy and Bill, have you guys come up with your number scores yet, or are you waiting? I know Bill's review is done. What did you? But Jeremy, have you come up with your number review yet?
I think I have it in my head. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a 9.
Okay. Bill?
Right now, I'm waffling between an 8.5 and a 9. We'll see what I have by tomorrow morning.
All right, and I put it at a 9 as well. And we're going to be doing a variation of this probably come later on the site this weekend. But can you guys think off the top of your head where this fits as far as ranking your favorite Star Wars movies? Or is that something you would like to think on more?
For me, I have a cloud cluster of it's gonna be Empire, this one, and Rogue One, but they're kind of at the top of the list for very different reasons. As a movie by itself, I kind of think Rogue One is probably the best of it. However, as far as like most impactful in the history of film, you can't get away from A New Hope. And Empire. Empire just kind of created a thing, and one cannot go back to 80 and see it again and revisit it. So it's kind of in this mythical place. Is it really that good or not? That's another debate. And then this one's better than any prequel. I was never that fond of Jedi, and so it kind of leaves it right up there. I don't talk. 7 can hang out with the prequels.
Okay, Jeremy.
My ranking has been pretty ironclad, even with the new stuff. But this is definitely gonna jump into the top half. I have tickets to see it 2 more times on Thursday, once on Saturday, and I think once on Sunday. So by then I'll have a pretty firm grasp on where I put it. But for me, it's definitely better than any of the prequels. That's not just, I don't hate the prequels like most people do, but it's definitely above all of them. I, like Bill, don't really like Return of the Jedi all that much because I think it drags a lot in the middle. But yeah, Empire is forever going to be my number 1. New Hope's going to be up there, but this is definitely going to be in at least the top 4, maybe even second by the time I see it again.
Yeah.
I did my definitive ranking today on Twitter. It goes Rogue One. Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie, and I will fight people. I know that pisses people off too, and I don't care.
I can see it.
2 is Empire. 3 is actually Last Jedi. 4 is actually The Force Awakens, because Force Awakens was the Star Wars movie that really made me love Star Wars. Then A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, and Attack of the Clones.
Like way down in Attack of the Clones.
I hate Attack of the Clones. And I know a lot of people like Revenge of the Sith quite a bit, but I can tell you exactly where I was when I saw that movie. I saw it in an LA theater during E3. I went with my dad and a bunch of his coworkers when I was like, oh God, what year was that? I think I must have been in high school still, probably. And if you could think of a more ideal scenario to seeing Star Wars opening weekend than in LA during E3, like, there you go, it's great. But I just remember sitting there during that entire Obi-Wan Anakin fight on Mustafar and just being like, this is so fucking boring. I'm so bored. I wasn't able to get out of it. It wasn't engaging enough for me to forget that I knew how it ended. So, yeah, I actually think Phantom Menace is hated more than it deserves to be, personally. But that's a whole nother debate.
My British friends and I have this running joke, which is that Phantom Menace might actually be better or feel a lot more deep if it was in Hungarian with subtitles.
All the best. We'll catch you later. Cheers.
What? Wait, hold on. You need to explain where that logic came from.
Well, the idea is that if it was in a foreign language with subtitles, then it suddenly gives it this slightly weirder, different layer. Like, oh, okay, it's a European art house science fiction movie, because the entire plot was about trade agreements and negotiations, and somehow it diverges into the coming across this little kid. And when you think about how it doesn't quite connect together, and that's actually a problem with the script of all three of the prequel trilogy, is that George Lucas is very much trying to say something, but he couldn't quite get it there, and so there was always this weird sense of something missing, so that the bits about Anakin and some of the logic didn't always fit together. And yet there was still something going on that he was trying to say, because I remember having a discussion to say that George Lucas's two trilogies are actually sort of autobiographical, because Luke in the first trilogy is George Lucas, and Anakin in the second trilogy is George Lucas, like nearly 20 years later in middle age. Because the idea is that Luke is this kid who's kind of naive and trying to get ahead in the world and trying to prove himself, and sort of failing until he sort of succeeds. Whereas Anakin is this angry, misunderstood kid who's massively flawed, who's trying to do the right thing and thinks he's right, but circumstances and everyone kind of misunderstands him and screws him over, and he ends up doing whatever the hell he wants, and basically everything goes to hell anyway. And it's a kind of interesting allegory, because I got the feeling that George Lucas kind of identified with Anakin in the second trilogy, so he was trying to get at something that we're not quite sure what yet. On top of the political subtext, since it was in the George Bush era, and it was about how democracy was sort of accidentally voted away because people were getting lied to all the time. So it was a weird hitting mix of a lot of interesting themes that don't fit together. But then you start to see them and you think, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, the movies themselves aren't necessarily very good, but then there are interesting ideas floating around in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the prequels are marred by poor good ideas poured by poor execution. But again, that's an entirely different discussion that we'll probably have someday.
Curious what Lucas's idea for the current trilogy, his version, might have been, because
we will never ever know.
Yeah,
that has been locked away in a Disney vault that was encased in concrete and thrown into the sea. We will never know what that was.
Yeah, because what I'm curious about is what the political subtext of this trilogy are. I think they might be more explicit in Last Jedi when I see it.
Yes, there is a character whose main purpose at one point is to sit everybody down and explain some political allegory. And it's pretty obvious what the character is. Mm-hmm. You'll know it when it happens. It's actually one of those clunky moments that I was like, okay, I know what you're doing. There's a bit of show don't tell here that I'm not... you're doing a little too much telling than showing here, but it's not. Right. It's not a very long scene, so it doesn't really hamper that much. But as far as political allegory, there is a lot more in this one than there was in Force Awakens. So in that sense, I think you'll enjoy that angle.
Yeah, I suspect that might be a script note.
Could be.
Yeah, I when I watch it, I think I'll be able to tell.
You will. It's not like subtle. It's pretty obvious.
Star Wars films are not really renowned for subtlety.
No. But,
no.
I mean,
Insert cute creature here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can keep hitting
Enough said.
the cute things all you want, Bill. Whatever. I don't consider this to be a spoiler. Do you know what the entire purpose of the porgs are? They are tension relief.
Nothing.
Tension relief.
They are used for a bad cinematographer that doesn't know how to frame anything interesting on an island, so they throw little cutesy things around to go, oh, how cute. What? And the eye roll says everything because she knows I'm right.
No, that's not how eye rolls work. I would think somebody who lives with Marianne would know that.
I
This
guarantee
is
you
true.
that porgs will be big in Japan.
Porgs are going
There'll be porgs here.
huge in Japan. Huge. And the little Vulpixes too. Or Vulplexes are the crystal foxes.
Crystal Fox.
Yeah, crystal foxes.
I've been calling them Vulpixes because that's what the name looks like.
Yeah. Did you ever find yourself switching Alliance from Team Porg to Team Crystal Fox?
I'm on team cute creatures. I want to catch them all like a Pokemon master.
Okay.
All right. If we're gonna do spoilers, we will do it in either a second segment. So let's wrap this up. We've been going for long enough here. All right. My name is Kaitlyn Booth. I am the head film writer here at Bleeding Cool. I write all sorts of news and stuff like that. My review for The Last Jedi is up and it is spoiler free. But if you are one of those people whom I know exist because I've talked to a couple of you today that are worried about some things, some content as far as anxiety and stuff like that, you can shoot me a PM on Twitter at Katie's Movies. I will clear up any concerns you might have as somebody who can't watch something like Game of Thrones for those particular reasons. I totally relate to you. So if you have any questions or anything, or you need to be prepared for something for spoilers, just shoot me a message and I will absolutely hook you up with an answer.